Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of a Storm Robotics article. This audio podcast is part of a Storm and Blasto. This audio podcast is part of a breakout edition, and this audio podcast is part of a Storm Robotics production. And today, looking at sort of the lab test investigations in around surrounding Huntington's. So the investigations are in the main to confirm two main things, two main aspects. Initially around Huntington's and the abnormality and around the Huntington's gene, and secondly or subsequently, abnormality where dementia may be may and dementia may also sort of coexist. So, lab investigations around Huntington's initially begin with DNA repeat expansion investigations, and the investigation look sorts to identify the HD Huntington's mutation, and it uses a procedure called PCR, polymerase chain reaction, to identify the number of particular amino acid repeats in amongst Huntington's and amongst the Huntington's gene, and the test the investigation is accurate in confirming the condition, generally, owing to where no other condition has a similar has the same or similar genetic mutation. At the same time, to iterate here that a particular a particular a, a particular a particular sort of part of the part of the genetics is homovanillic acid. Homovanillic acid is the neurotransmitter dopamine, and dopamine plays an important role in amongst movement, and the amount of homovalinic acid in the cerebral spinal fluid tends to be lower, has a lower titer in those diagnosed with Huntington's gene, than in comparison to the healthy population. Um, the degree of reduction of hominovalinic acid is also a marker or biomarker of the severity in looking at the severity of dementia and life expectancy in Huntington's. A sample of the fluid of homovalinic acid can be obtained for investigation through a lumbar puncture procedure, to uh, cerebral a sample of cerebral spinal fluid. I'm now looking at sort of some in around investigations in a look at a sort of additional sort of investigations. So central nervous systems imaging can be helpful in identifying the extent of sort of damage in around central nervous damage system, in around central nervous system damage. CT or computerized tomography scan and or magnetic resonance imaging of the central nervous system tends to show atrophy or a sort of a shrinkage of parts of the central nervous system affected by the Huntington's gene, and single photon emission computed tomography or in amongst the evidence has shown changes in metabolism and blood flow in parts of the central nervous system in those affected by uh, and where the Huntington's gene has been implicated. Position emission tomography tomography shows changes in central nervous system function that often occurs before symptoms begin in Huntington's, and position emission tomography is generally available in sort of large medical institutions, and its usefulness in Huntington's is is um, is now more sort of evidenced and documented in and amongst in amongst sort of more current literature. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast is part of a Ztorm Robotics article. This audio podcast is as part of a Ztorm and Blasto. This audio podcast as part of a breakout edition, and this audio podcast as part of a Ztorm Robotics production.